It seems to me, first of all, from what I understand from doctors, that's really rare. If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
And when it comes to establishing your worldview, I was curious, what newspapers and magazines did you regularly read before you were tapped for this to stay informed and to understand the world?
I've read most of them, again, with a great appreciation for the press, for the media.
But like what ones specifically, I'm curious that you...
all of them, any of them that have...
Can demonic spirits attach themselves to inanimate objects? The answer is yes.
Welcome to Twatwaffle of the Week.
I wanted to start out a bit light, as we have a few hard-hitting topics to explore. This story comes via World Union of Deists.
The American Bible Society's new museum near Independence Hall will link the good book to the nation's roots.
Quote, 1 block from Independence Hall, where the Founding Fathers met to form a new nation, the American Bible Society is making a case for the good book's place in American history. The messages in Scripture about freedom, truth, fairness were so ingrained in the culture of the new republic that Christian principles must have influenced the documents that form its foundation. New mission for the 202-year-old organization dedicated to increasing engagement with the Bible. End quote. How many fucking Bible museums do we actually need? This next story would be comical if not for the blatant levels of hatred embedded within.
Woman who called Michelle Obama an ape defrauded FEMA of $18,000.
So a wee bit of background first. Taylor's 2016 accusation was not original. An allegation concerning both President Obama and Michelle Obama's sexuality or identity were quite prevalent in right-wing punditry. In fact, I have 3 postings on Havoc and Chaos concerning such from 2014. As I said last week, criticism based solely on some perceived fault is ludicrous. Coming from an elected official, in my opinion, makes it deplorable, to borrow from HRC. The irony in Teller's guilty plea is one major talking point within the Reich is basically fraud within government spending. Quote, the West Virginia woman who made national headlines in 2016 when she was placed on leave from a county development organization over a demeaning Facebook post about then First Lady Michelle Obama has now pleaded guilty to defrauding the Federal Emergency Management Agency out of thousands of dollars of disaster benefits. Pamela Taylor, 57, admitted on Tuesday that she falsely registered for more than $18,000 in FEMA disaster benefits after historic flooding in Clay County, West Virginia in 2016, according to the U.S. Attorney General's office. Those floods killed 23 people. Taylor claimed that her primary residence was damaged in the flood and that she was staying in a rental property, the prosecutor's office said. Her home was not damaged, however, and she still lived there. End quote. Next, we will be reading about how her arrest and conviction, which she admitted to in court, was a plot by George Soros to silence her. So, as people know, I am a huge fan of Rachel Maddow. I always have been since her WRNX days in Massachusetts, where I lived for a time. So this next bit of news had me chuckling, literally, because to watch the clip is quite humorous.
Rachel Maddow cracks up at Trump thinking he's now going to invent the 4th of July.
And this is from Raw Story.
Today, President Trump told reporters at the White House that he is considering a new idea that has just occurred to him, a new idea for America, which is that he is thinking over, he is considering that maybe from here on out, there should be a parade and fireworks in Washington, D.C. every year on July 4th. How about that? He mused about this idea to reporters today. He said, quote, we're thinking about doing something that will perhaps become a tradition, proposing fireworks for the 4th of July. Even in D.C., it's a bold idea from the president today. I kid you not, the president today proposed to reporters, in all seriousness from the White House, that he's thinking there should maybe be fireworks and a parade on the 4th of July in Washington, D.C. It could catch on, could become a tradition.
We're in really, really deep trouble if this continues. You think conspiracy-minded thinking has no consequence?
Man charged with setting fire to D.C. restaurant linked to Pizzagate hoax.
Quote, a California man has been arrested and charged with arson 3 weeks after prosecutors say he set fire to the Washington, D.C. pizza shop at the center of the far-right Pizzagate conspiracy theory. Federal prosecutors arrested and charged Ryan Jaselski, aka Ryan Remus, 22, with 1 count of arson in connection to the fire at Comet Ping Pong on January 23rd, the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department said on Thursday. The fire was extinguished before police arrived on scene, and there were no reported injuries. The incident sent the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives on a manhunt to find the suspected arsonist. U.S. Parks Police arrested Jaselski earlier this month after federal prosecutors say he climbed over the fence around the Washington Monument, NBC Washington reported. The chase between police and the suspect was caught on camera. So, first Comet Ping Pong had an idiot looking for a basement that does not exist, and now some fucktard decides to try to start the building on fire. Yeah. Science enthusiasts piqued my interest with the following posting.
I do not understand why this isn't a bigger story. This is a passage that Georgia Rep. Drew Ferguson, a Republican of course, had on display in his congressional office under glass. He, or someone in his office, knowingly and intentionally turned the book to this page. The book is titled General Robert Edward Lee, Soldier, Citizen, and Christian Patriot. Someone put the book there. Someone on his staff knew. He knew. There's no way he didn't know that this was there and that it was turned to this specific page. He is either outright lying or the dumbest fucking person to ever serve in Congress, or both.
As I said, my interest was piqued. I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? I did a little digging, and what I discovered was very disturbing. This is according to CNN. The American Federation of Government Employees is officially demanding an apology from U.S. Rep. Drew Ferguson, a Republican from Georgia, after an AFGE representative discovered that the congressman's office showcased an extremely racist book while visiting Ferguson there this week. Further along, according to Miller, the spokesman, the book was encased behind a glass shelf and was open to the page featuring the following particularly vile passage.
The blacks are immeasurably better off here than in Africa, morally, societally, and physically. The painful discipline they are undergoing is necessary for their instruction as a race. If he means well to the slave, he must not create angry feelings in the master.
While I am a little bit more willing than Dan to give Ferguson a very, very slim benefit of the doubt and accept he was not aware of the book's presence, it then opens up a very large can of worms. One, he either needs to do a better job at vetting his staff and what they're placing in his office, or if the state decorated his office like some interviews he has stated is the case, then the state as a whole has a very large problem. Simply put, in my opinion, It boils down to one issue. A guy who represents thousands of African Americans and other people of color probably shouldn't be showing off a book that calls them inferior to white people. I wanted to include a few more stories in this edition of Twats, but my stream of thoughts was interrupted by what is the topic of today's episode. So I'm going to cut this short, and I will bid you adieu for the moment, as I will be back live shortly. So with that, I hope you all stay smart.